Okay, let's jump right into this explainer of Norman Vincent Peale's 1952 classic, The Power of Positive Thinking. Today, we're really digging into exactly how Peale proposed that mental imagery, specifically holding a beautiful visual in your mind's eye, actually shapes our physical reality. Whether you're totally new to his concepts or revisiting his work, we're going to break down his methodology step by step. Let's get into it. Peale actually wrote this for what he affectionately called the plain people of this world. The whole backbone of his philosophy relies on this idea of holding a beautiful visual, a highly specific, peaceful mental image to quite literally manifest success and knock out what he saw as the modern plagues of worry and self-doubt.
Here is how we'll break it down. 1. The root of self-doubt. 2. Emptying and refilling minds. 3. Prayerize, picturize, and actualize. 4. Building the happiness habit. And 5. The power of faith.
Starting with Section 1, the root of self-doubt, the modern ailment. Peale identifies the inferiority complex and a cluttered, worried mind as the absolute root of everyday struggles, arguing that our feelings of inadequacy actually interfere with us getting what we want. There's this great anecdote in the text about a salesman who used to drive around all day just, as Peale puts it, drinking fear and defeat thoughts, which obviously tanked his sales. He fixed this by clipping positive affirmation cards right to his dashboard. A fear thought paralyzes you, right? It creates resistance. But a faith thought actively modifies the facts, releasing your inner powers and magnetizing success. And that brings us to this crucial point. Overcoming self-doubt has to start with cultivating tranquility. But Peale makes it very clear this isn't about just escaping life and hiding out. Actually, a peaceful mind acts as a driving energy center. It's literally a power plant for constructive living. You just can't generate dynamic energy if your mind is frantic. Moving to Section 2, emptying and refilling minds, the practice of mental catharsis. Peale believed that before you can even think about filling your mind with positive power, you have to do a mental emptying, ideally twice a day. He uses this highly descriptive language, suggesting you literally visualize your fears draining out of your mind, almost like water draining from a basin. He tells this fantastic story of being on a ship, the SS Lurline, and telling an anxious passenger to imaginatively take his worries, drop them overboard, and just watch them disappear in the ship's wake. It's a beautiful visual for letting go. And crucially, once your mind is empty, you have to actively refill it with thoughts of faith, or those old worries, they'll just rush right back in. He calls this concept Imagineering. It's essentially picturing a beautiful visual to calm your nervous system and actually build factual results. He advises that as you go about your day, you should intentionally let motion pictures of peace cross your mind. So you might conjure up an image of a deep, quiet valley at sunset, or the moonlight on a rippling lake. This intentional imagery acts as a literal healing medicine. But, it begs the question, how does this translate into tangible success in our daily lives? Picturing a peaceful lake is great for calming down, sure, but how exactly did Peale argue that these mental images change the physical circumstances of our careers or our goals? Let's look at Section 3, Prayerize, Picturize, and Actualize, the core formula. This right here is the absolute engine of his methodology. It combines spiritual practice with psychological visualization. So, prayerize means talking a problem over with a higher power daily. But picturize is the psychological mechanism. It's the act of holding a beautiful visual, a specific, vivid image of a successful outcome, until it actualizes. He argues that people who assume failure tend to get failure, but those who mentally photograph success, they tend to achieve it. The text gives a pretty wild example of this. Peale and his team were struggling to launch Guideposts magazine, and they desperately needed 100,000 subscribers to survive. A colleague essentially told Peale he was failing because he was focusing on what they lacked. She told him to hold a highly specific image in his mind of exactly 100,000 people eagerly reading the magazine. And Peale reports that the very minute they truly visualized that specific success, the circumstances shifted to actualize it. Now for Section 4, Building the Happiness Habit, Daily Practical Application. Peale firmly believed happiness is not some random accident. It's a habit you manufacture. He breaks this down into really digestible, everyday habits. For instance, he mentions a friend, Dr. Daniel Poling, who would simply repeat the words, "I believe," 3 times every single morning before getting out of bed. He also urges readers to completely cut out worry conversations. The idea is, if you talk up a good result instead of a bad one, you're actively invoking the law of positive effects. As we shift gears from mindset over to physical health, we really have to ask, Can these thoughts actually change our biology? Peale dedicated a lot of space to the intersection of faith, positive thinking, and physical vitality. Paralleling a lot of what we now know from modern cognitive behavioral therapy, Peale outlines a framework where how we think directly dictates our physical energy. Citing doctors of his time, he talks about psychosomatics, the idea that repressed fears and negative attitudes literally drain the body's energy. By feeding your mind a beautiful visual of vibrant health and relying on faith, he argues you can stop those energy leaks and tap into a boundless reservoir of vitality. Finally, Section 5, the power of faith, expecting the best. Peale notes that a sustained expectation of the best actually sets forces in motion that cause the best to materialize. The mechanics work like this. When you expect the worst, you release a power of repulsion that literally pushes good outcomes away from you. But when you learn to expect the best, you release a magnetic force in your mind. This law of attraction draws creative powers and successful conditions right to you. To back this up, Peale brings in the famous psychologist William James to highlight the scientific basis of confident expectation. He frames this as a universally recognized law. Your belief at the very beginning of an undertaking is the critical variable. You have to throw your heart and your faith over your obstacles, knowing that your material self is simply going to follow. As we wrap up this explainer on the power of positive thinking, take a second to reflect on Peale's core message. The thoughts you hold actively magnetize your reality. So I'll leave you with this. What beautiful visual are you going to choose to picturize and hold in your mind right now? Thanks for exploring this framework with me today.